All right. So here we are, and it's Irvin first with Windows Subsystem for Linux.
Yep, Windows Subsystem for Linux is bypassing the firewall, the Windows firewall, and going straight out.
Oh, I used to be mad at it because it didn't have direct access to the network adapter. And they said, oh, we added that. But now that you mention it, that would have
they added that with a direct line out.
So you're going to have to run a Linux firewall too.
Yeah.
Nice.
But it is not following the Windows firewall at all.
That's awesome. Only Microsoft could figure out how to have Linux vulns on a Windows box.
Yep.
Actually, that's kind of cool. I noticed since I started using Windows 10, because I'm using the Flare VM, I'm typing Linux bash commands in, and they're working. I said, wait a minute.
I have a theory that Microsoft is slowly transitioning to Linux.
That's what I agree.
It seems they're certainly cooperating with Linux more and more. Now, Irvin had this story where they're actually going to put Linux on the bottom and Windows on top. And I don't know if we're going to go that far, but we're getting close to where there is no difference in using Windows and Linux.
I mean, the lore used to be that Windows was a ripoff of the original Mac OS. Once Windows moved from DOS to standard GUI. So
Windows 3.1.
They're getting back to their Unix roots.
Yeah, well, there was I think actually a lawsuit when they brought out Windows 2000 Server. It was the first one that would actually stay up for any length of time. They actually stole a lot of Linux code and they had to pay a settlement. Anyway, well, that makes a lot of sense, really. In fact, that's what it should do. Your Windows firewall and your Windows drivers are not supposed to be between Windows System and Linux and the network. But of course, it's a vulnerability.
Yeah. And I was going to say, if you haven't checked out the new Cali for Windows, I recommend doing that, because now it used to be you would have just a command prompt with Cali on Windows.
Yeah.
But they've improved Linux for Windows Subsystem.
Windows Subsystem for Linux, yeah.
Yeah, Windows Subsystem for Linux. So much that you can actually open up all the GUI Cali apps and have the Mate or XFCE bar at the top, just like you would have in one of those old virtual machines with the seamless desktops.
Yeah, that's cool.
So we don't need VMware anymore. We can just run Linux on Windows without VMware.
If you can totally do that. I still recommend running, VMware or VirtualBox. But there is an option now where you don't even need that anymore. If you need like all the RAM and all the resources on your box,
oh sure,
you can just run Linux on Microsoft Linux, and it runs Kali.
Has access to the whole file system, right? So you could totally infect the Linux and take over the Windows through it.
Yes.
That's awesome. So when you said now you have
bypass the Windows firewall, you can open up any port. And there's
although I have found that Microsoft Linux does not support the Windows external drives, the Windows network drives. So if you have all your stuff on your network drives, which you should because you're running a NAS and all your important stuff's on your NAS, Microsoft Linux won't have access to that.
But you
make
could
a stage 2 malware that'll do that when it gets to Windows.
Yes.
Well, yeah.
I'm thinking, could you come in through Linux, put some Windows ransomware on, set it so it'll connect it to the registry, and then wait for them to go back to Windows, and then this sounds awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I'm all for it. Okay. And then there's the Shadow Bunny.
Yes, Shadow Bunny. So here's a good idea, and sort of related to what we were talking about.
Yeah.
Instead of normally when you release malware, what you do is you have a binary for the host system. Like if the host system is running Windows, you throw on a Windows binary and you run it. Well, what if you were instead to just send over a virtual machine and run that instead, where you don't have to deal with the antivirus? You can encrypt the virtual machine. You can even encrypt the memory, and you can have essentially homomorphic encryption of your malware running on the system. And most of the stuff you want to do with that malware, you could totally just do from a virtual machine. You don't need the host access.
No, that can't be homomorphic encryption. What was that?
Well, it's fake homomorphic encryption, where the RAM in the virtual machine is encrypted. So you can essentially do encrypted operations in the, unencrypted within the VM, but to the host operating system, everything that's being done is essentially encrypted.
How do you do that?
There are extensions for certain CPUs that allow that.
Wow.
So how is this running in a system? Like, is it utilizing Docker? Is it utilizing?
This one looks like it's utilizing VirtualBox. It would not utilize Docker. Docker's not a virtual machine.
So you have to have a machine like a server with VirtualBox on it, where you can spin up another machine and they won't notice that. That's the part that I don't quite get.
Well, I mean, imagine if you're running Linux and you have KVM, and you can just tie into KVM, which is, you know, and it doesn't necessarily have to be VirtualBox. You could send over some malware that it is in of itself a virtual machine.
But there will be a process running. It's just that the process will be an expected process. This is like one variation of living off the land.
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
Except it's all you can eat living off the land, because you can have all the malware and all the resources you need.
So as long as the victim has a virtualization software installed, you could send like an Ansible file to build out the VM in the back.
And I don't see why it has to be virtualization. Why can't you send over like QEMU and then have just a light Linux distro running in the background, running maybe even on a different architecture, like like send over QEMU, running a VM that runs PowerPC.
Yeah.
You know, and then it's just like the host operating system's like, what the hell?
Yeah. No, it does sound pretty good.
Yeah.
It's basically an obfuscation technique to conceal binaries. Yeah, that's cool.
Really awesome.
Yeah.
It's common sense, but no one ever came out and said like, let's do this until this article. So okay.
Yeah, well, it's a good idea. Anyway, so it just came out. I saw this just before we started. This is some real movie producer that he made famous documentaries, and he made a real documentary about the coronavirus now, which he made this Enron and these other ones. So he's made a documentary now about, of course, the coronavirus and of course all the stuff that those of us who have been paying attention know. But it looks pretty exciting. There'll be a real movie coming out soon. So that'll be fun, interesting. And so a couple more about the virus. In case anybody doesn't know, they've proven it's 13 to 20 times more deadly than the flu. And Russia has rushed out their vaccine. This is what Trump wants to do here. He's totally putting pressure on the CDC and so on to lie. They've already made several false statements in issuing, like it's perfectly fine to open up the schools and stuff like that, when the scientists totally do not agree. And that's why Redfield is expected to quit any day soon, because it's even getting too horrible for him. And he's gone along with a lot of it. But anyway, the Russians have made this thing called Sputnik 5, which is deliberately named after the satellite that shamed us into having a space program, because they went to space first. And so they're planning to gain a political advantage by having the first corona vaccine. And they did it the way Trump wants to, by just skipping phase 3 trials. They did not bother to prove that it is safe or effective. They just did like animal models in the first trials, and now they're mass producing it and distributing it and selling it. And so it's a huge risk. But of course, you know, you might regard this as just medically justifiable. If people are dying, you might rush out an imperfect vaccine fast and save lives. And of course, they're gambling. If it works, they're doing the phase 3 trial with real patients in the real world, just everywhere. So within a few months, those people will either be spared the coronavirus or they'll stop dropping dead or something. So, and you know, this might be the way for America to get a fast vaccine, is to just use the Russian thing in a couple of months, because we're going to find out in mass whether it works or not. But anyway, it's that's where we're at. And he's trying to do the same thing here, but I don't think he's going to succeed, especially now that Trump has the virus. And that surprised me very much. You know, Trump got the virus and then he canceled his events and went into quarantine. I don't know why he just not have more events, because the official position is spreading it is good. We should spread it more. But he covered it up for about a day and continued to have meetings, and all his staff did, after they knew that they would be exposed. But when he finally got it, then he's going to go in quarantine for a while. So it's anyway, I was saying to students last night that the best thing for us would be if Trump got it, because then he might take it seriously, because that's what happened to Boris Johnson. So we will see. But of course, not that many people do die. So if he and Melania get over it, then he'll probably just be encouraged more than ever to say, oh, it doesn't matter, it's fine. I don't know. But we're in a crazy place. Anyway, this one, yeah.
Yeah, so our own intelligence agencies now are telling us to look out for various disinformation campaigns that are already in that are already in progress to sow discord and discredit the electoral process and undermine confidence in our democratic process. And they didn't differentiate, which heads of state were responsible for this. I mean, just the other night during the debates, Trump said, essentially told us, well, if I don't win, then it's rigged.
Well, he said that all along.
Yeah, and I know. I'm just saying. I'm just saying that it's. They're talking about foreign threat actors here, but I think they left it deliberately vague. I would like to think they left it deliberately vague. So something to pay attention to. We're getting an actual official warning from our own intelligence agencies, which I think is pretty glaring.
Yeah. Oh, it is. Yeah. Certainly is. All right, and then we got your Cloudflare tool. I thought this looked great. Have you tried it yet?
I haven't tried it. I'm not actually a Cloudflare user. Or
we're not. Okay, you have to leave.
Right.
Goodbye.
What's wrong with you?
I don't have a Cloudflare account, but I do have a CDN through DigitalOcean that uses Cloudflare. But anyway, that's besides the point. So it looks like Cloudflare is releasing this API shield free to all users who have Cloudflare, since most don't use encryption or certificates on their APIs.
Yep.
Just as a deny all layer for anybody who has an API through Cloudflare.
Yeah, and also you can make it sure only official people with the certificate can use your API, which is much better.
Right. Yeah. So those who don't have a certificate, here's another a layer of protection. For those.
Yeah, it sounds great. I'd like to see how well it works and stuff. Yeah, and then we got a new space toilet.
New space potty. Yes, this is exciting. The last space potty went up in the 1990s.
Oh.
And it is not as awesome as this space potty. And space potties are so important because, of course, when you're in space, everything floats.
Yep.
Including what comes out of you.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to capture all of it, and you can't make sure there are any accidents. And so there is a $23 million new toilet coming up, and it's going to be installed on the International Space Station right before we bump up the number of people on there. So currently there are 6 people on the station. We're going to bump it up to 7, and there's going to be a new toilet, and it's going to be a fantastic toilet. It is titanium. Pure titanium. Can you imagine just the luxuriousness of a pure titanium toilet? And the reason it's titanium is because when you go to the bathroom in space, everything has to get reused, including your urine. So there's a lot of acids and stuff that goes into reclaiming urine as water and stuff to drink. So it'll withstand all the elements. It'll last there for probably another 20 or 30 years. It's awesome stuff. If you like space and you're interested in how to live in space, this is a great new project. And also the other important thing is that the original space potties were made primarily with men in mind, and this is more unisex.
So are they going to sell a home version for us to use down here to make money? They totally should.
I would buy a $23 million titanium toilet.
Well, it may be it sounded like it could be a cool prototype that maybe years down the road they'll figure out how to make it cheaper and maybe be able to conserve more water. That would be pretty cool.
There was a rock star that had like a solid gold toilet. I remember a while ago.
Can we say hello to admin for a second?
What's that?
Say hello to admin.
Yeah, we have an admin here.
Who's admin?
I don't know, but someone is here who's admin.
Someone
Hi, admin.
Hi, admin.
Oh, admin. Oh, there's the third person that's wanted in. Oh, yeah, I see. Well, all right. Hello. Anyway, all right. That's a good name. Maybe they're going to hack us. That would be exciting.
Maybe they already did.
That's true. That could be. They discovered discovered the secret YouTube channel.
Yeah, I mean, well, somehow they managed to get the password to this,
That's right.
chat. That's
Super secure password.
Yeah.
That's right, exactly.
Who knew that could be figured out?
Yeah, this reminds me of when people put links on my link page like 10 years ago because the password was one letter, X.
This is the quietest Zoom bombing ever.
Yeah. Anyway, so we got the Trump's attack on voting, of course, all this stuff trying to claim that the voting is corrupt and that we need to not have the ballots. And this is one of the steps towards authoritarian rule is that you get people who just start breaking the law openly like this. They're holding, there's a branch of the government that distributes food to people, excess food. And Trump has now declared that all these boxes have to have a campaign letter from him inside them, which is, of course, illegal for him to do and illegal for them to do. So now they've had to suspend distribution of boxes and hire lawyers because if they put campaign materials in the boxes, they're going to lose their nonprofit status. And so this is the repetitive thing that's been happening in the whole Trump administration. He issues illegal orders to the military and to its staff, and then they have to try to figure out what to do when you begin issued the illegal orders. How do you push back? What do you do? You can't just totally ignore orders. So it snarls up everything, like the Muslim ban. And this one is just amazing how now that he got away with the first two illegal campaign events, like Republican National Convention at the White House, they're now just doing blatantly illegal stuff. So the Texas governor's now shut down the drop-off sites for early mail voters. They're down to one per county. So people have to drive hours just to drop off their ballot. And each of the Republican states are doing more and more voter suppression, more and more blatantly, until you get this guy, Jacob Wohl, who's the famous guy. He set up robocalls that called, I think, 80 million people or something. It called some large number of people and told them that you're going to go to prison if you do a mail-in ballot. They're going to use it to put you on a list, and they're going to check your warrants and arrest you, and they're going to put you on a special list where you'll be compelled to be the first people to get the unsafe coronavirus vaccine if you do mail-in ballots. They've been calling people, telling them this.
Wow.
And that was so bad, they actually got caught. Because he did it and then gave his real name. This is me calling you with his real name on it. And they asked, why did he do that on something blatantly illegal? And they said, he's done so many things and gotten away with them that he has forgotten that you don't just confess to crimes. And anyway, so it is, it's funny how it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Trump says people are going to cheat, and he's making sure it's true by cheating and cheating and cheating. It's absolutely true. The Republicans are cheating right and left in this election. And so it's going to be very exciting. Unless we have a landslide, this is going to be a wild ride, because now he's telling the armed thugs to go out and intimidate voters at the polling stations and stuff.
Yeah.
Hope
the projection is just amazing.
Which projection?
Well, it seems like the standard pattern has been to accuse the other side of whatever it is you're doing.
Oh yeah, that projection, yes. Yeah. And so, we're in for a crazy time. That's why I hope everybody registers and votes. This might be your last chance. There might not be another election after this one. You don't want to miss. And Singapore.
So some good news, potentially. I thought this was pretty cool. They've kind of been on the vanguard in security as far as treating it like it's actually an important thing. And I thought it was cool. They said, we really have to look at this like it's a necessity for consumers, like running water, electricity. And so essentially they're going to start a scheme where they label products with security ratings, consumer products. And essentially this government official likened it to like nutrition facts on the back of food, where you can look at it and see, what star number of ratings that it gets, because they break it down into certain categories where, they can evaluate that product based on whatever it is they're rating. For example, whatever categories they're looking at, and then give consumers an actual better idea of what it is they're getting. And then they're also going to make some resources available to various institutions that may not be both citizens and institutions that may not have the adequate services they need to protect their resources. So I thought this was pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, I'd like to see the tests to see
Yeah,
what they
me
regard as
too.
secure enough. And of course, I noticed this other thing, which is what Obama wanted to do. You're going to use the government authentication for everything. I don't think that's going to fly over here. But
Oh, yeah, I saw that, and that was the one downside. The other downside to it was that somewhere, yeah, that Singapore pass deal,
Yeah.
you know, that's maybe problematic, both from a well, you know, usability and authentication standpoint, but also a privacy, you know, because really necessarily want all of that stuff connected. But I think it's a step in the right direction, and that this kind of thing is what, you know, what incentivizes companies to get their products more, to actually build more robust products that protect the consumer, because right now that's one of the biggest problems that we keep facing in the industry, and that there's really not a lot of corporate incentive to do that.
yeah, you know, Mudge has been talking about cyber UL listing for more than 10 years, but somehow it never seems to happen. Where you could somehow just put a label on your box, and then people might be willing to pay another $5 because it's actually secure.
Right.
Sounds like a great idea. Somehow it never happens. I don't know what the holdup is.
Right. I did think it was funny how he said, like, we had to actually put a limit on the number of stars. Like, we had to max it out at 5 because all the manufacturers would just give themselves a 6-star rating.
Well, the manufacturers are giving themselves ratings. That kind of violates the whole point. I thought you'd have some independent agency test the stuff.
Well, they are. I'm sorry, I said that incorrectly. They would claim they'd max it out.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. But I mean, the end result is sort of like dolphin safe tuna or something.
Right.
Just be whether they apply.
Great analogy. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, so then we got, oh yeah, GitHub, right?
GitHub now has code scanning available,
Yeah.
availability built in. So if you have something that might potentially cause vulnerability later, it will tell you now.
Well, I want to try this because other vuln scanners are fantastically bad, so I'm skeptical. But I should upload a few vulnerable things and see what it finds.
Yeah, I have planned to run it on everything I have already and see what comes up. But yeah, it's now built in. It's not something you have to add on. So it's definitely something good to see what happens.
Yeah, because at the end of the exploit development class, I had like countermeasures, and I tried running scanners against all the vulnerable apps, and they didn't catch most of it. And I'm like, hey, this is no good. Here we got like an obvious buffer overflow or SQL injection, and it doesn't catch it. What's wrong with this picture?
Yeah. So yeah. Something good to try and see if it works as well as they say. They're saying they have exciting results, but yeah, let's put it to the test.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's definitely good that they have it. I just bet it has its limitations. Anyway, and then we got permanent work from home. Well, yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, so before Corona hit, the idea of working from home in a lot of places, including the telegraph company where I spend a lot of time, was considered kind of like, no, don't do that. You can't work from home. You're just trying to get off of work. Come on, don't do that. But then it hit, and then people started working from home, and then people started to become really productive, and not at all what they thought would happen.
Yep.
And so I think that the whole work from home thing is going to become very popular even after coronavirus, even after the coronavirus magically goes away in spring.
Yeah.
Right.
We're gonna, a lot of people, I think myself included, are going to at least advocate for a few days a week, 1 or 2 days a week, even if we still have to go in most of the time, to just work from home, because there are a few things, because there are advantages to going into work, but there are also advantages of staying at home once in a while, and if you just combine the two, you get the best of both worlds. So I think that I think that working from home is going to be the new standard. We're all going to be doing it, at least from time to time. And we need to adjust our threat models accordingly, permanently, not just temporarily, but permanently. This is just how things are going to work from now on. Become an insider today, Sam. Bye. And the pop-up that came up.
Oh, yeah.
Bye. Yeah, no, this is just this is just going to be the norm now.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
San Francisco's even trying to pass an ordinance or an order saying that, and there's of course a lot of pushback against this, saying that that companies need to, Bay Area companies need to keep it in place that employees work from home at least 3 days a week, because they've noticed that there are some pretty massive environmental impacts to the lack of commuter traffic.
Yeah, I think it's great, and certainly it's good for teaching. That's why, there are colleges like hiring people to clean the classrooms and say they're going to open again face-to-face, and I say, I don't care. I'm not doing it. And I have been doing it. I'm doing face-to-face for years, but as soon as I put my stuff on YouTube, 90% of the students quit coming to class. They'd rather commute from home, which is quite logical. I mean, why would you drive into college for something like a computer class?
Exactly. It's funny because the last semester that we taught fully in person, I was doing that, and there was one day where I was just talking to an empty room because everyone was at home, and I was totally cool with that. But I was thinking, like, it's kind of silly that I drove across the bridge and all the way in here to speak to an empty room when I could have just been doing this from home.
So that's like, a lot of people were surprised. They were all struggling. How do I deal with this semester where we have to work from home? And I said, actually, my classes are going on exactly as they always have, because I switched to this years ago. Anyway, and so then I got, and just the same, this I thought is pretty great. It reminded me of someone who perhaps shall remain nameless, where they actually make you spend like 8 hours a day on Zoom for no apparent reason. They talk about this company. They just decide everybody has to be on Zoom for like 8 hours a day, every day, just so we make sure that you're like not goofing off or something. And people are saying, this is insane. This is invasive. This is horrible. I'm not getting anything done. This is like having a room where you're just in an office and people chattering around you all the time. Why? Yeah. But this is someone who's reluctant to admit that you might be productive when there isn't someone over you with a whip every minute.
Yep. And I think a lot of them just don't get it. There are a lot of old school micromanagers who really just don't get it at all, and when that happens, this is the kind of thing that you end up with.
Well, I remember this thing I saw a year ago where they would put like a infrared detector under your desk that tells them whether you're sitting at your keyboard or not, and times off every second you get up so they can punish you if you spend more than like 5 minutes a day going to the bathroom or something.
Wow. It seems like there'd be some good ways to spoof that process.
Obviously. But, it's the same thing. These are the basic slave drivers. My great-grandfather was an efficiency engineer. He would go to assembly lines and have a stopwatch and record how many pieces are you doing per hour, fire this one, hire that one, speed up this step. There was a time when they would try to optimize humans like machines to make more factory units go by per second. And these people are still thinking it the same way, I think. Anyway, it's
except if they're really not, because if they looked at output, which is how the engineers used to work, the efficiency engineers, if they looked at output, what they're doing is probably counterproductive.
Yes, that's true. So what they're doing is they're asserting control. This is what a lot of teachers do. They abuse the students to make them do something stupid and counterproductive, but the point is to make sure you obey the rules. Right. Like these anti-cheating software.
Yes.
That just messes everything up, but we feel like we're in control now.
Yeah, there was one just totally insane post that I saw on Twitter last week that just had me dying, where this professor just flipped out and was like, you had 642 eye movements while you were taking the exam and you must stare straight into the screen. Like, really, you're teaching an intro level economics course. It's not that serious.
Well, 10 or 15 years ago when I was a younger teacher, I was like always making them take quizzes in class and punishing them for cheating. And then I taught Cisco, where they take these online open source tests with no control at all, with Google and everything, and it had the same result. And the more experienced teacher said, it doesn't matter. It's not worth it. I said, I guess not. And now I just use open source quizzes. The only point is to make them like read the book and review it. And the end results are fine.
That, and I just had this conversation yesterday about making a test. Part of the thing about our field is if you can quickly Google a question and find the right answer, then that's really part of the job.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just too much to know in this field. You are constantly Googling and you're constantly looking up documentation. And I think one of the traps that a lot of students get into is they feel like they have to know everything. And so when they're coding, they're like, well, I should know how to code without looking up the documentation. No, you should be looking at the documentation when you're trying to print hello world. I mean,
yes, exactly. I mean, nobody keeps this in the RAM all the time.
Yeah.
I was just talking about this with a colleague the other day. It's like, I've learned how to manually and mentally calculate subnets probably 6 or 7 times. If you ask me how to do it right now, I would have to look it up because it's one of those things that I never use except when I'm taking a class or a test. So it just gets dumped out of RAM.
Yeah. Now, I like the subnets because it's math, so I could do that. But there are certain pages on how to do something simple in Python that I have literally been to 100 times. Every time I have to make a loop and read every line of the file, I go to the same page I copied it from before. I can't remember it, but I remember where that page is.
Yep.
I mean, I can program in basically any language. Just tell me, what to do. But that's only because I know what to Google for.
Exactly. Same here.
It's like, I know what a dictionary is. I know what a map is. I know what a reduce is. And so because I just know the terms, I know what to look for. And that's all you need.
Exactly. Because the other thing that I think a lot of people don't understand, oh my God, no anti-cheating. I think part of it too that they don't understand is that in and of itself is a skill. Is you have to know what to Google and how to evaluate what the right answer is going to be out of the sea of BS search results that get returned, and do it quickly. And to my mind, if they can do that and get the right answer, then they're good to go.
Yeah. That's why I'm often tempted to use that. Let me Google that for you when students ask questions, because
I may or may not have used that a time or two.
Yeah. Well, I always decide that would be a little too sarcastic, but the point is, they often don't know how to use Google. They don't know how to write terms. One really common thing is they'll click on the first result. They don't right click and open in a new tab. I never even bother to look at it. I find like the first 5 and open them all, and then look at them. But they look on the first one, it's not there, and then they ask for help. I'm stuck. I don't know how to find it. I said, that's not how you do it.
Yeah. And the thing is like I said, like even if you're writing Hello World, you go through the documentation. And I'm constantly I spend more time reading than I do actually coding. And if people actually did that, we would have a lot less bugs in our software.
Yes.
We would encourage more independent research. Have our students not constantly have to ask for help, but school just drills into this idea that you just need to memorize everything, memorize the book, memorize this, memorize that, and that's just not. There's just too much stuff. You can't expect students to, or anyone to memorize that stuff, no matter how many times they do it.
I actually have.
Good.
Well, I was just gonna say I actually have a few classes in the past where I do a how to Google, how to find answers you don't know module. And, you'd think that that's something super basic, but it's actually really helpful to especially a lot of the intro-level students, and it's something that they appreciate. So I think that that's something too that we have to start teaching our beginner students more, is how to find those resources and evaluate them quickly to, find the info they need to know.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah,
I know. I was teaching the Python workshop. You guys there, and then I did what she said. I Googled something. I found the docs, and I said, "Oh, never read the docs. The docs are like long and complicated. Just keep going to the examples." That's what I do, which is like the opposite. You've noticed recently, most of my practices are the opposite of best practices. But anyway, I think that's what most people do.
I'm over here.
Sometimes it's fun to read the docs or even the man page, because you'll find stuff that you didn't even think of. This is a handy command, and I didn't even know this tool could do that.
There are some times I do that, but 90% of the time I don't really care about the details of this one issue. I just need to get over this one hump. What I really care about is something else.
Yeah.
Well, the docs are going to tell you all the traps for new players, and the examples are not. And that's why but I do agree that the examples are more. I feel like examples are more valuable in a lot of ways than the documentation, but the documentation will give you the traps that
I like the examples because I can I could read, but I want to do.
The best is when you have, the best documentation is when they have 1 or 2 examples for each different thing. And you can see like, oh, okay, this is how they structured that command to do that thing.
But the examples have to work.
Yeah.
That's the fun I've been having with assembly is here's an example. And okay, it works in one way, in one specific way. But if I change one little thing, everything breaks apart.
Oh,
and then
yeah.
I'm like, I need some help.
So I'm going to do something a bit sacrilegious. I'm going to praise PHP because I think their documentation model is damn perfect.
It really is. I mean, that's the best thing there is to say about PHP.
Yeah. They have the regular documentation. They say this is a pgrep function, and here's the parameters, and here's how to use it. And then there's like these comment sections of everyone using it. Like, here's an example of this, using it for this. Here's an example of using it for that. And that is what documentation should be.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Well, I think this is actually one of the biggest skills in all aspects of modern internet use is how do you deal when you have just far too much complexity and far too many facts? How do you find a path to get somewhere? Mm-hmm. And so, I think you have to learn which 90% you can just shrug off and then what 10% you actually have to read. That's very hard. Anyway, that's very good. Somebody got the hospital attack. Yeah. I heard about this, but it looks like you got quite a bit more about it. Yeah,
so it's pretty scary and pretty widespread. So apparently, according to the news, it's been one of the biggest cyber attacks in history, maybe the biggest. And all these different hospital systems are getting hit. And one of the interesting stories here that's actually pretty sad is that these started hitting Europe. Waves of these attacks started hitting Europe a few weeks ago, and one of them hit this hospital in Germany where supposedly the hackers were trying to target a university, but got the hospital instead. And this woman ended up dying because it essentially paralyzed this hospital. They couldn't accept any more emergency patients or something. She had an emergency, had to be transferred to a hospital that was further away, and then died. So these are pretty serious. Hackers, you hackers out there, please don't hit the hospitals. It's pretty scary.
There was no ransom demand. That's really rude and pointless.
Yeah. So, we don't know what's going on here, but it's not a good thing.
It sounds like sort of amateur stunt hackers just spraying something out without even like having a plan.
Yeah, possibly. Who knows? It could just be a, and then, but one of the other articles that I saw did say that it was ransomware. So
yeah,
the Cleveland one said that these are all ransomware. The Universal Health Services is the first one that I heard about. Well, no, the German one was the first one I heard about. Then the Universal Health Services one was the second one that I heard about. And those are all ransomware attacks. So
yeah. Now, I know this is why they have I Am the Cavalry. There's the medical systems are incredibly insecure and poorly designed from an IT security point of view. So they really need a lot of more help that way.
And we've been knowing this. This isn't new information. We've known this for several years. There's been a lot of awareness campaigns on this stuff. And I mean, they're still screwing up. I mean, last time I went to a hospital, which is in February, I'm in the ER and they leave the terminal logged in next to me, logged in for hours and logged into the patient database with all this patient data up on the screen. I could have gone in there and it was at Kaiser. So I could have gone in there and typed Sam Bowne and probably pulled up your chart, I mean, it's totally nuts. And it was within arm's reach. I could have just sat there in my hospital bed and be with exposed USB ports even. I could have just been dumping data and no one would have paid attention to me. No one would have noticed. It was just sitting there, and there's a Post-it note on there like, make sure you log out of this terminal, which was obviously very effective because no one did.
Yeah, well, you know, I remember when a student who shall remain nameless kept hacking me. I tried to make some system that would automatically lock the machine when I walked away, and I found that there was no solution for that. You know, that would be the cure, would be to have some,
Yeah.
but there is in fact nothing you can easily set up that will do that.
I mean, it's just mind-blowing. It's really just mind-blowing.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and I think it's a challenge for us. I mean, the fact is, doctors and nurses are busy doing something else that is important, and you can't expect them to become security experts too. You have to build something that will take care of it without them worrying about it.
Absolutely. And I actually am taking a usable security course where one of the assignments was to address this problem. And the thing is, you know, it really wouldn't be that hard. I mean, it's real easy to put key card access on a terminal. They all have key cards on them clipped to their scrubs because they need it to access different parts of the hospital, because they're pretty good on physical security now. Not so great on information security.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is why they need security management systems and, you know, audits and stuff. You need to somehow integrate the systems. Well, I remember I went to Los Alamos Nuclear Lab for a conference, and they have physical security is crazy. There's this color-coded thing where the black card can only go far on the white card. And then the last day I was there, I was walking on the sidewalk, and there was just a card dropped there on the ground, one of the access cards.
Wow.
Oh, wow, this is awesome. I didn't try it out. I went and found somebody and turned it in. But, you know, that's the problem with all this, of course. It's the humans.
Yes.
Anyway. All right. So any more comments?
No.
I'll stop the recording.